Ravi, you actually took part of my next question, which is what I always get asked by clients. How do you measure this? And so, I think that at first for a lot of companies that were getting into it, it was young people are here, it's cool, we want to be cool, so we have to be there. But I think now that we're at the place where you've got buzz metrics and there's all of these measurements around it, I think clients are also getting incredibly sophisticated about understanding that and wanting to really see something that's all about measuring and click-throughs. And so how do you deal with that part, as well as making sure consumers are getting what they want as far as being entertained, getting instant content the way they want it, or instant gratification? So how do you kind of craft campaigns that do both? And I know one of the big campaigns that's been talked about a lot is just Rihanna and CoverGirl, and how exciting that is. And there's so many different platforms to work with her on, whether you're talking about something you can do with her music, something you can do mobilely, seeing her on a website. So how, and it's really something that I think consumers have really responded well to. So what goes into planning and executing something like that? Even some of the things done with Tide, a brand that isn't traditionally seen as being cool, Tide is now getting into the digital space. So how do you also kind of stay true to who brands are and also deal with what the client expectation is as far as the measurement as well?
Oh, wow. Lots of stuff in that question. Let me think. It all, I guess the safe place to always start is with whatever that brand's particular objective is. And most of the time, we're not going to come up with a big idea, as Eric mentioned, that is not in sync with the brand or the brand's equity. And we're usually not going to make a lot of recommendations for things that aren't measurable in some way that we're not going to be able to share or go back to the brand at some point in time and say, hey, look, here are the results. I don't think they would even buy a lot of what we are bringing to the table if we didn't have that measurement piece built in. Unfortunately, working for P&G, they have a lot of proprietary type ways of measuring things, modeling their marketing mix and seeing what we have going on out there generates the best response. And fortunately, we have those tools, which I don't know if to what degree they're widely accessible or available. And I know I've missed about 10 points of that question, and maybe didn't even answer anything right.
I was to say, I mean, just measurement's a bitch, and it's the hardest part of what we do, frankly. And this would be a much greater world and a lot more fun to do marketing if you didn't have to measure. And I've been working in digital for long enough that this is a day in, day out struggle with clients over years and years of trying to get them to do more in digital. Because the promise, of course, is that you get more exact data. You get a lot more insight into who you're participating with, who you're touching, what they're doing, what all their actions are, how long, time spent, and all kinds of other measures that are really great. But you have to make sense of that and then convert it into something that's meaningful for a client. So, in general, we tend to, when it's done badly, you tend to measure what you can measure. When you do it right, you measure what matters. And it's the conversion between this is what you can achieve on TV, but this is what you're losing with TV. This is what you can achieve with this or that digital channel. And this is how
it's still difficult to say, okay, well, we're going to do a mobile campaign, or we're going to do a campaign that's going to provide either premium SMS, or it's going to be a web campaign. How do we convert that to like some kind of a dollar amount? What's the value in terms of how much I'm paying for it, number one, and then how it actually affects my service is a little bit easier to react to. But I think the biggest issue is like trying to say, okay, how do we convert this value? I think on the internet it's a little bit easier, but in mobile I think it's still being sorted out.
Another question probably for you. We're all kind of dealing with user-generated content. And I think when you talk about teens and tweens, and you talk about this idea of Warholism and how they all believe, I can be famous, I can create something and be on YouTube. How do you deal with that with brands who have an image that has integrity and brand equity, and everything they want to keep kind of close to the vest, and young people who want to take everything, dice it up, make it their own, and feel ownership? And so, I think there are definitely brands out there that are doing it really well, kind of giving access and saying, come here, take what we're doing, and post this as your wallpaper. You can use this as your AIM icon. You can join our group on Facebook. How do you kind of play the line? Because it's a really important place where you want to make, this young consumer feel like they have the ability to come in and kind of own it and say, this is my brand, I really like this, but then also stay true to everything that's obviously invested in some of these big brands, especially when you're talking about the P&Gs of the world.
Well, I think it really comes down to how the brand wants to work with somebody like us. I mean, there are some brands that, you know, we're engaging who are really quite open to develop user-generated content, to develop contests, to develop fully integrated look and feel sort of microsites within our site, and to customize our tools. So basically, we have this flash tool that allows people to make voice tones, and you can customize every single element of it, from the look and feel to what the actual sounds are that are within the creation mode. And there are some people who, when we sit down and talk to them, you know, like I'll go to a studio, I'll have a conversation with them, they'll be like, this is awesome. We want to use every single element that we can of our actors, of our key art, of everything that we're doing, and build out something that's going to be not just fun, but also really interactive and allow people to create user-generated content. And something like that for us is really a big win in terms of what we get, what our partner gets, and what our audience gets, most importantly. But then there's other people that you really want to engage. And at the end of the day, if the brand is reticent about allowing people to use their key art, to use their brand image, to use their brand experience and customize it to create various elements, well then, you know, we have to make a decision. Okay, well, are we just going to sort of fall back and maybe do a little bit of stuff with them, or are we just maybe going to move on? And I think that that is kind of where it stands from our standpoint. There's going to be some brands that aren't going to want to, you know, engage in creating a lot of user-generated content. But there are others that will say, okay, I really see the marketing value and I really see the brand enhancement of getting engaged with a community like ours. And you know, that's something that, you know, we're flexible enough to engage with people, you know, according to their level of ability, you know, in terms of their flexibility, their desire to reach our audience, and their feeling that what we're doing is not taking away from their overall brand experience. Or in some cases, if you take a look at like a music label, you know, there's certain issues of cannibalization that come into their head. Whether they're true or not is one thing, but the other thing is that they'll look at us and say, okay, you guys are more of a threat than a help to us. There are some people, though, who are more enlightened at the labels who will say, no, actually, this is an opportunity to get into a community and to have some fun with them in a way that we wouldn't be able to do it ourselves. But you know, it depends on who you're talking to and what the brand's actual, you know, feeling is about user-generated content. I think it's an evolving picture.
Is there more to say on this? No, well said. Well said. Just the short of it is, you know, we have some brands that are definitely easing the ropes a little bit on getting involved in user-generated content. I mean, we also have some brands that we're always okay with it, Wendy's and Activision, and you know, it's going to be hard to get Walmart to do a lot of it. A lot of it has to do with adjacency and knowing where they're going to appear, and a lot of them are really nervous and have anxiety attacks about where their ads are going to, how their ads are going to get used. But we've done a lot of stuff, and I mean, I'm not sure it qualifies necessarily as user-generated content, but you know, we did a pretty bad campaign that didn't work very well for Yukonuba, where we did downloadable dog barks through a mobile phone, which I thought was a great idea. Nobody else. I'm the only one who thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, P&G's definitely eased into this space. We've done some interesting stuff. There was a very, very popular Old Spice ad with a girl dancing, and it's when she's hot, it's hot, and when you're hot, it stinks, or something along those lines. And the ad itself generated so much attention from consumers. These young guys were actually calling P&G's consumer relations group saying, who is this girl and where can we find out more about her? And so based on that bit of insight, they actually created a web page where you could take that and create your own custom version of it. And it's very successful, and you know, people would create like this version of her, you know, doing the same motion over and over and over again. It was kind of funny. But anyway, so they're easing into it. Legal is watching very, very closely, but it is certainly a priority for the company. And the company said, we're going to learn more about social media. We're going to help all the brands understand social media better. So definitely a priority for P&G.